This was the first book I learned to read. As a young kid, that could probably be one of the most exciting moments you'll ever have in your lifetime. It sparked my interest to read more and more books. My dad would always read this book to my brother and I. He made the book really funny by adding extra comments on top of what's already there in the book. He read the book in a funny manner, so my brother and I would always have a good laugh. Another book my dad read to us was Open Wide. This had several different characters in it, and he would always have a different voice for each of them. He didn't like the book much because of the amount of characters it had, but I had a good time listening to him read it to me. This series was something my brother and I read together. I would read most of the book to him, and then he would read a little bit to me since he was still learning to read. This book was really funny to both my brother and I. When I was little, this book convinced me that dogs could talk if they ate alphabet soup. Of course, I just had to test that out. I would feed my dog soup, hoping they would begin to talk, just like the one in the book. My mom came in the kitchen one day and caught me feeding the dog soup. She hasn't let me live that down yet. The Junie B. Jones series was my favorite book series to read on my own. My grandma was really proud of me for wanting to read these by myself, so she continued to order the new ones for me as a gift. I liked how the story was told and the way the reader could relate to the little girl in the stories. When I was little, I had to move away from my grandma. My grandma came with the idea that we could read to each other over the phone, so we began to pick books to read each other every night before I went to bed. This book was one of the books we read together on our time apart. This book was a gift to me from AT&T Pioneers Kansas City Mix Club. My grandpa worked there at the time, and so they made me a book that was all about me. I like to read this book because no one else had the same book. It is interesting to look back and see what I was interested in when I was that little. This book put me through an emotional roller coaster. I loved dogs and I loved reading about dogs. But this book had a very sad ending that made me never want to read another dog book again. I wouldn't recommend reading this book unless you like to cry. I had to read this book in high school. I already didn't like to read books that were forced in high school, but this one was one of the more painful ones to read. It had an underlying meaning that didn't make sense to me, and the book in general was just weird.
Created using Powtoon.